We are 22S Radio. 22S Radio is 22smedia.com and 88.1 FM KKJZ HD3, Long Beach, Los Angeles.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and now our World Broadcasting Tag Team Champions of the World and a Cruiserweight Champion.
I'm Ethan.
I'm James.
I'm Rob.
And this is episode 108 of Beyond the Ropes. We are BTR Pro Wrestling Talk, a show where we discuss all things in the news of professional wrestling, sports entertainment. We discuss matches, we review them, we give our predictions, and so on and so forth. We have been off for the last month under the heavy circumstances of this global pandemic, but we are back here finally doing an episode, all three of us together. I know James and I have been doing BTR Plus on Instagram Live a few times. And so it's good to have everyone together. Unfortunately, this episode is probably going to be a depressing one because we've got to discuss about layoffs and passing that occurred yesterday. Let's start quickly with that. At the age of 69, Howard Finkel has passed away. We do know that for the last few years, his health has been declining. So I guess it's not completely a surprise that, it was just time to go. It's a shame, but he was well beloved by many people. I don't know if you guys have any memories of him or moments that, because he was more than just an announcer. He was WWE's first employee.
Yeah.
He was there for 40 plus years, so.
So with the Fink, I mean, he's one of those guys who was clearly underappreciated during his time with the company, obviously. And that seems not just to be with maybe the fans and stuff, but just people in general in the company who may have taken the Fink for granted at times. But the one thing that will always stand out, well, there's a few things that will always stand out about the Fink, at least for me. Anytime, he was always a big part of putting champions over and stuff. With the way, if it comes down to a controversial decision, I don't know for sure off the top of my head if he was maybe even a part of like that Shawn Michaels British Bulldog Royal Rumble finish or anything like that when he's announcing who actually won and when the Ultimate Warrior beat the Honky Tonk Man, or you get some upset and you hear and new Intercontinental Champion, World Champion, whatever it may be. He always was probably the first guy after someone wins a title that gives that initial rub. And when you think about it in today's current time and day, even with the with there being no crowd at WrestleMania, having someone like Fink saying and new WWE champion Drew McIntyre after his win over Brock Lesnar, that would have been a great little early rub for McIntyre for sure. But the Fink will be missed. And when you think about the things he did backstage, I mentioned the Bruce Pritchard podcast quite a bit. Fink is mentioned on there and some of the things that he would do in terms of, I think one of Fink's jobs when he wasn't on the mic was he was one who would watch WCW, because obviously Vince McMahon and everyone's not watching WCW during the Monday Night Wars because they're worried about Raw. But Fink would have to come in on that Tuesday morning with a report of what happened on Nitro, who may have jumped ship and is now on WCW, some of the matches, give a quick report to Vince and company about what's going on the other channel so they can kind of stay up to date and be able to compete the way they were back in the day. I'm sure Fink did a lot of other things. But yeah, Fink will definitely be missed. I think he probably had a streak longer than The Undertaker when it comes to consecutive WrestleMania appearances. And then that was a streak in itself. I think the first one Fink missed was probably within the last 5 years, I want to say, or maybe even the last 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, where he missed the WrestleMania. And then obviously as his health declined, he wasn't at this year's WrestleMania. I don't think he wasn't at last year's either. So it's been a few years since he's been off of WrestleManias. But yeah, I mean, he was a part of every WrestleMania in some way or another. They always found a way to get him on. I'll let you guys share whatever memories you have. If not, I'd be more than happy to talk about a few other ones that come to mind.
Rob, anything?
I just remember he's one of the main reasons why my favorite game is SmackDown Shut Your Mouth.
Oh, why is that? Wait, was he on that?
He's the one that introduces the wrestlers.
There you go. He's an announcer there. Early 2000s, he was still the voice there.
Yeah, and he was kind of phased out there a little bit. Well, not phased out, but I mean, as other people kind of came along, like when you had Lillian Garcia and these are other notable people, and someone like the Fink, if he was, I would say Fink was obviously a team player. He was a Hall of Famer for sure. I think he went in 2009. But the Fink was someone who didn't have to extend the olive branch or open the door for as many other people as he did. When you think of Tony Chimmel, I believe, is another one. When you think of some of the guys of today, I mean, Fink could have been doing it for years if he wanted to, all by himself. But they always had 2 or 3 other guys. I remember during the the brand split, but I think when WCW's talent first came over, I think they had like a rotating 2 or 3 in-ring announcers, and it got kind of weird at times. So yeah, I mean, but for Fink to be able to do that, and to even at some point, I don't think it was ever made a big deal of, but when he did step away, and I guess maybe took on more of a behind-the-scenes role, Fink has always been a part of that company, and I think I think he might have even called matches as early as like the Bruno Sammartino days. So he's been around a while. He was around before Vince even owned the company. We say that, and it is fact that the Fink was the first WWF, WWE employee, but he was with the company, I believe, long before that with Vince Sr. So when you talk about the cornerstone of that company and someone who has been a part of the childhood of many, I'm almost 30 years old, but for the people who have been fans way longer than me, and for their life, much like I have, they've, Fink is one of those last remaining pieces of their childhood. When you think about it, there's not a whole lot more guys left. When you think about, we lost Mean Gene Okerlund, Bobby Heenan, Gorilla Monsoon, a lot of those other guys that you grow familiar with on the mic over the years. There's not many of them left. I mean, when you think about it, yeah, I mean, when you think about who some of the older guys that are left like that, I mean, and again, Fink wasn't really old. He really wasn't old, but, you start thinking about Pat Patterson and his health and even Vince McMahon. We're getting to the point where, like, a lot of people say they don't care about Vince's booking or his decisions now, but the guy's been doing it for a while. He's getting out there in age. He may appear to be slowing down a little bit, but he's still going full steam. But I mean, WWE is going to be seeing a lot more changes in the coming years. That's for sure.
Vince is going to outlive us all. What are you talking about?
He might. Who knows?
Vince hasn't been the most popular figure over the last, especially over the last few weeks. This past Wednesday, I believe, about 40 talents on and off screen were released after WWE made some budget cuts. I'm not going to go over the entire announcements. I will go over everyone that was publicly announced as released.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be more, and there might have been more. What I do know is there was a report going around earlier that about 40% of the company was either laid off or furloughed. And so that's terrible. I know their live events department was hit really hard because obviously they're not doing live events in front of anyone. Right. So there's no jobs for them, unfortunately. I'm going to go over I'm going to start with the main roster on-air talent that was released. I'm going to read out the names, and then I guess we could discuss what we think about it and everything. Drake Maverick, Kurt Hawkins, Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows, Heath Slater, Eric Young, EC3, Leo Rush, Eric Rowan, Sarah Logan, referee Mike Chioda, Eric Rowan, Primo Epico, Mike Kanellis, Maria Kanellis, Zack Ryder, Noe Jose, Rusev, and from the NXT side, Deonna Purrazzo, Alexander Jaksic, MJ Jenkins, Coach Ace Steele, Coach Kendo Kashin, coach Serena Deeb, and producers. Some of them might have been furloughed. Kurt
Mhm.
Angle, Aiden English, Lance Storm, Shane Helms, Sarah Stock, Scott Armstrong, Billy Kidman, Fit Finley, Pat Buck, Sean Davari, Mike Rotunda, writer Andrea Listenberger, and Spanish language announcer Jerry Soto. Those were all the names that were publicly announced on Wednesday.
Real quick, one name we probably won't talk about. Actually, yeah, I believe so. I think the last name you said there was like Maria, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, I heard she was the one responsible for that Otis and Mandy angle as far as writing goes.
Andrea.
So is that Andrea? So obviously, again, we're not very familiar with some of the writers unless you're like a very super hardcore fan and you know how to find out who the writers are and stuff. But I had heard she was the one who was responsible for kind of putting together that Otis angle, and the Otis angle was one of the highly anticipated matches, I guess, kind of going into it. Maybe it didn't maybe live up to par for some people, but the storyline going in, that was probably one of the better storylines going into WrestleMania. So to see her, I'm hoping for a lot of these guys are cut. I don't know what more you had to add. I'll be happy to give my thoughts on just the whole. I have the list here in front of me, so if I look away, you know why. But there's a lot to talk about there.
Go one by one, I guess.
Yeah.
Drake Maverick. I know he released a very emotional video following his release. He will be competing in this Cruiserweight Championship interim match to find out Cruiserweight champion. Obviously, the current champion, Jordan Devlin, who wrestles primarily in NXT UK, cannot get over to the States and defend his title due to the circumstances. So they're going to have a tournament for a new champion. And Drake Maverick will compete in his final WWE matches over the next few weeks. He has 3 left. And we'll see where he goes from there. Your thoughts on Maverick?
Yeah, I think so. Maverick is one of those who's very interesting. I mean, when you consider his title run or his title pursuit of the 24/7 title, but also when you just look at the video that he did put out and how much he said these last few matches will be, and how unfortunate is the word I'll use that he'll have to compete in this tournament, be a part of this tournament. More or less show up to work knowing that after this, that may be it. But I think it says a lot when you look at, at least for him, and maybe there with the company, maybe there's some sort of a, hey, we're going to bring you back kind of situation. But when you look at him wearing that WWE shirt, I think Maverick is someone who would probably be able to find work pretty easy, maybe going to somewhere like AEW. But I think it says a lot with him wearing that WWE shirt. For all I know, he could have just been wearing it when he got the call and made that video. But I mean, I think it also says something too for him to still wear the colors or the logo of the company that just let you go. A lot of people wouldn't be willing or would be down to do that. But I think it says a lot about Maverick and his passion for the business and wanting to be there. But hopefully it's something that WWE can look at and find something for him to do going forward. I think he's one of the guys for sure that will be coming back.
I agree. Rob, do you have anything to add before we move on?
It's just disappointing that he didn't get a cruiserweight belt yet.
It still may happen. I mean, I know it probably won't because he was released, but you never know. I mean, they could change their mind or something.
I think it's kind of interesting. Like, I watched the video. I watched his reaction after he got the call and whatnot, and just to hear, he kind of, I don't know, it was different. Like, he kind of worked an angle in it by saying he's going to give it his all with those matches and that he has 3 matches left. Does that mean, I mean, I haven't really seen the bracket, but does that mean he's going to be in the semifinals or something? Or
it's a round robin tournament.
Okay, so he's guaranteed at least 3 matches.
Yes.
But then I also kind of like what he said there is like he's going to use this opportunity to showcase what he can do and to try and make them change their mind and whatnot. So I found that kind of interesting. And I mean, for an industry that is known to be predetermined, I think it's still kind of interesting for him to say those things. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe we'll see something. And again, tell me if I'm wrong. So the tournament they're going live again. But I think my mindset prior to hearing that and I guess putting it to that they are going to be live and it's not a taped tournament was that how that whole thing was going to work. But I guess I mean that's got to change your mindset. I mean, I'm curious to see how his matches are going to turn out. Knowing that he's going to be out of the company at least for a little while. Who knows how much longer he'll be after that? But the whole situation is going to be kind of interesting. I'm curious. I'm curious to see what happens with Drake next. Should be interesting.
Kurt Hawkins, this is his second time getting released from a company. He did make his way back a few years ago.
Yeah.
When there was an original brand split, I believe in 2016, around there. I mean, he seemed very positive about it, judging by his tweets. He already has merch out. Speaking of which, Drake Maverick does have merch out on Pro Wrestling Tees as well.
There you go. Always work your gimmick. Always get your stuff out there.
A little bit. And I guess we could talk about this next guy as well because they're a tag team. Zack Ryder has been with the company for 14 years.
Right.
Was also released, and he seemed very positive. He left a statement saying he kind of smiled when he got released. He was looking at a picture of, an art piece of when he was hugging his dad at WrestleMania when he won the championship. So they both seem very positive about it. They obviously have their podcast, and they were, they're going live tonight at 6 p.m. for us. So we'll see what they're going to go on there. But they seem very positive, and I'm sure they're going to – I mean, Zack Ryder is good friends with Cody, so –
Okay. Well, I mean, so that makes things interesting. I think both of them should come back. I don't know for sure. I mean, they really weren't used. I mean, Ryder for sure was one of those guys who kind of really wasn't there. I mean, sometimes when he's there. And I mean, wasn't he the one where they – or I think that was Big Show, but no, Ryder did it too, where he wasn't on for the whole year, and I think he tweeted something, brought it to their attention, and next thing you know, he was like on the December 29th show or whatever it was. So yeah.
I think that they'll both be back along.
And what wasn't it with Hawkins too? Was he one of the ones who worked with The Rock this last time around, or someone?
When The Rock came back, yeah. Hawkins was.
He was the guy, right?
So yeah. They're reliable guys.
Right.
You definitely see them as long as they're not signed anywhere else. They should be back. I'm sure there's a door open. And as we continue, I know there was word saying, as you mentioned it, that some wrestlers were told that the door was open.
Right.
So we can make speculation on who that may be. Two guys that may not be returning because it seems like they already have an alternate path are Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows. I think the two most surprising releases.
Yeah, were they the last two? I think they're the only two from the list. I'm looking at the list now. Yeah, they were the only two that were released that were on WrestleMania's card.
Correct.
So
it's shocking. But they've, again, both released merchandise. They're going to start up their podcasts that they had before WWE. Okay. And they've already teased heading back to New Japan. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's going to be the case. Obviously, New Japan is also not running any shows right now.
Right.
So they could end up, they have friends in AEW as well. So the situation of, these guys do have potential plans to go elsewhere. But again, there's also two guys that could be back.
Right.
Do they want to be back? I don't know.
And they signed a contract last year, right? Because I think there was a chance of them maybe even leaving the last time. Yeah. But they did sign a contract and were able to come back. And obviously that kind of plays part in why they may have been part of these cuts despite being on the WrestleMania card and whatnot and being more or less mid-gimmick, mid-angle with AJ there. is that contract, trimming some of that fat. I mean, that's kind of almost the danger in a way of signing a bigger contract is, sure, it looks nice. You feel appreciated, but at the same time, you're a little bit higher up the list when it comes to that line of being cut. When you're looking to trim some fat and considering maybe they weren't having some of the matches on Raw and Smack or on Raw or Smack or whatever show they were on, just to get that get their money's, or the company getting its money's worth. I mean, when times are good, you have a list of guys like that still available, and while they may not even be on TV, you're able to stockpile talent, have some people that you can use for house shows, use some people you can use for training for other guys, like when you have a Rock coming back or whatnot, but also just having those guys to keep away from a New Japan, to keep away from an AEW, to keep away from Impact. You're keeping that talent away and you're stockpiling it. And I mean, it's kind of weird to say, but that's kind of more or less what they were doing. When you look at someone like EC3, who I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute.
All right, and we got to hit a commercial break, right, Rob?
Yeah.
So
commercials.
when we return, we're going to discuss more of these unfortunate layoffs. And we're back with Beyond the Ropes, episode 108. I'm your host, Ethan, joined alongside on my screen here. He's not actually by my side. He's the analyst, James, and of course on the controls, or our timekeeper for this and for the foreseeable future, Rob as well. Before we go on any further, you can follow us on Twitter at RealBTRRadio. You can follow me at EthanNB95. You can follow James at
JHW Reporter, not only on Twitter, but also on Instagram as well, where you can find our BTR Plus live streams and whatnot. So once again, follow me at JHW Reporter on Instagram and Twitter.
And you can follow Rob at
Rob Flores Media.
Awesome. And Facebook.com/Beyond the Ropes. I just posted something on our Twitter and our Facebook, so go check that out if anyone's watching or listening.
You should be watching.
When this goes up, obviously. Next up on the list of individuals that were released this past Wednesday by WWE, Heath Slater, 14 years as well. This one, he also got a shirt that says "I got fired," and it's on Pro Wrestling Tees. He just posted it. So I mean, the man has to do what he has to do. He has to get on Pro Wrestling Tees right away. I'm sure as soon as the call was made, he had to go get his shirt because the man has a family. He has kids now. He has kids. And win that title, the world title.
He's on pace. It's all part of the plan. If you look at the past success of 3MB members, especially with Drew McIntyre, as I mentioned earlier, defeating Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania to win the world title, or one of the world titles. You have Jinder Mahal, who we haven't really seen much of recently, and could have very easily maybe even been part of these cuts. But you have someone like Jinder Mahal, who was the first member of 3MB to be fired, brought back, and win championship gold. I think this is all part of the plan for Heath Slater, and I think Heath Slater will come back probably a little bulkier, maybe with a new hairstyle, and he'll have a title push and complete the trifecta of 3MB members winning championship gold at the highest level. Yeah,
he'll find work elsewhere for the time being. I know he did, along with Zack Ryder, make themselves available for bookings once this whole thing clears up. So we'll see what happens. Eric Young, he had a nice NXT run with Saturn.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when he joined the main roster over 2 years ago, it was just downhill. He was barely used on TV. So, but again, another guy who's a pro, been doing this for 20 years, probably close to 20. He'll be fine wherever he goes. I mean,
yeah, he's one of those guys that were on Impact who was kind of one of their day one guys almost, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, as early back as I can remember watching Impact or TNA at the time, he was part of it when I think he was part of the Canadian stable with Petey Williams and company back in the day. Then he had his own gimmick, and I think he even had his own show on the Discovery Channel or Animal Planet or something, if I'm not mistaken. So that's always another option for him as well. Eric Young is a talented dude. He has a personality. He's very outgoing. He'll bounce back wherever he goes. He can probably even come back in some sort of producer role maybe in the future. I think he maybe still has a few more years in the ring, considering he hasn't been wrestling in a while. And I always wonder about these guys. The house shows, they'll come around into LA every so often. So, I mean, even though you're not catching all the wrestlers, but I like to think hopefully he was getting used in some ring time that way because, like you said, he got called up 2 years ago, and I can maybe only think of one time maybe seen him on TV.
I think he's been on Main Event, so. No.
Maybe, yeah, I guess. I mean, doing what though? Not a storyline that can carry over into Raw or SmackDown at all, unfortunately. So,
someone who seems very motivated and someone who had probably the most potential, EC3. He was brought in on NXT as a big name. Unfortunately, he didn't really last in NXT very long. They didn't have anything for him, and he was brought up as part of these call-ups early last year, way to shake things up, and he never got off. Rumors going around that Vince didn't like him for whatever reason, and it just didn't work out. And judging by his social media, he seemed very motivated to do something very different or something new. So.
Yeah, I don't have much on EC3, but I do know. I was trying to look. I saw an article or something. I think I had a phone call or something that interrupted it, but I was in the middle of trying to see where I guess he has a new look or he looks a lot different now, or
yeah.
You got a haircut? I think he had a mustache or something, maybe, or.
I didn't see the mustache. I don't think he had.
I didn't get a good look. It was like I guess he was in the middle of doing push-ups or something, so I couldn't see his face. So yeah, but they say he has a new look and he looks different. So who knows? Maybe it can lead to something in the future.
He's good friends with Drake Maverick. They're best friends. I know he posted something with Drake earlier today, so they could potentially do something together wherever they land. If that's the case. Lio Rush, former Cruiserweight champion. He got off to a rocky start in WWE. He made a comment about Emma, who was actually fired at the time.
Yeah.
Got him a lot of heat. Awesome. Did you upgrade us, Rob?
Let's say running out of time, we've removed a 40-minute limit. I don't understand.
It says you give us more time, so we'll just keep going until we get shut off.
That's fair.
So, yes, by the way, thank you to Zoom. I'm sure everyone knows what Zoom is now because 3 months ago, no one knew what it was. And now
I had no idea.
Now everyone's using it for everything. So
it's a cool place. It's the cool place to be during a pandemic, apparently.
And of course, we are also on 22S Radio right now. So if you're listening to us there Mondays at 6 p.m., thank you for tuning in as well. Lio Rush, again, he had a brief run with Lashley being his manager. And then he was brought he was taken off TV. He got some heat again. And he became pretty popular in NXT for a little bit. He won last fall and won the Cruiserweight title. And he just hasn't been on recently, and he was one of the releases. So.
And I think with Lio Rush too, he's kind of stood out to me a little bit recently, just within a few days leading up to this release. I think he was part of not the Big Show's Netflix show, but they had WWE had a Netflix exclusive movie, whatever, I can't remember what it's called, but I think Lio Rush was a part of that. I think he was in that movie, and then he was also tweeting almost disgruntled in a way that he wasn't listed as a member of that Cruiserweight tournament, considering he was the champion at not too long ago. He probably should have been in that tournament. Maybe it makes sense now as to why he wasn't in that tournament, maybe, but at the same time, you see someone like Drake Maverick who's in the tournament but was also let go. So maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it's not that Lio Rush wasn't in it. But yeah, I mean, the guy is still young, I would imagine. I'm assuming he's still in his 20s. I might be wrong about that, but I think he has if he can hold it and keep everything together, I think he could still have a pretty decent career no matter where he goes. I think he'll be a guy in high demand. He's a high flyer and can put on a show. So.
Yeah, the movie you're talking about is the main event on that.
The main event. Okay, I was going to say the main eventer, but I was like, okay.
Eric Rowan. He was a part of the Wyatt family when he showed up on WWE television. He had a few reincarnations as a bludgeon brother with now Brody Lee, who was in AEW. And he had a brief singles run as a good guy. He was a part of a heel run with Daniel Bryan last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then most recently, he carried a giant spider to the ring.
And they got squashed, though, not too long after, right? They kind of cut the...
Drew McIntyre murdered a spider on live television.
So, I mean, if you look at the spider, Drew McIntyre got boosted and Eric Rowan got knocked down. So,
yeah, unfortunately.
Wrong end of the spider, I guess.
Yeah, so he'd been with the company for a while. So, I mean, he was involved in some major storylines. He did compete against The Rock at WrestleMania.
I think I remember this.
WrestleMania 32, when the Wyatt family interrupted The Rock.
Right. Okay.
But you can say...
No, I do remember. I mean, hey, anytime, though, you get a chance to work with The Rock in some form or fashion, I mean, I would like to think he got a good payday. I mean, you get a good payday for being at WrestleMania anyways. But, I mean, yeah, Rowan has been in a lot. I mean, my dad is, over the last few years, started watching wrestling a lot more, and I was telling him about some of the people who were let go. And I told him Eric Rowan, and while he didn't know the name, I said, you know, the one he had the spider recently and stuff. And then my dad also was aware of Brody Lee jumping ship to AEW. And I said, yeah, Brody Lee's partner. And he said, oh, maybe he'll go over to AEW. And I said, you know what? You never know. It's possible. But I think Eric Rowan will always find a place where, no matter where he goes, just because of his size alone, he'll land on his feet and he'll be in something. If not, he might become The Rock and be in the movies or something, you know, with that size and being able to do that kind of stuff. I think he'll land on his feet somewhere, some way. I mean, it'd almost be a shame if he didn't somehow.
Sarah Logan, who happens to be the wife of Eric, Viking Raiders. They are still employed, obviously. I will make a note that all of these names that were released have not been used on TV since this whole pandemic started. So, at least not on a regular basis. So it would
other than Gallows and Anderson, right?
It would explain why all these names probably got released, because there's no use for them on TV right now. So Sarah Logan started out in NXT. I believe she was in the first Mae Young Classic, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe, yeah.
She was in NXT for a little bit, not very long, before she came up with the Riot Squad. And they were for about a year or so. And after that dissolved, she kind of just has been off TV. She was sporadically on TV in recent months. And her last appearance was actually this Monday against Shayna Baszler, where Baszler beat her. I have not seen this week's episode, but from what I've seen, she did get defeated. And so, yeah, it's a shame. So.
Yeah, I think I was recently watching the Ride Along show, and with the Viking Raiders and Sarah, they were all in the car. So it was kind of cool getting, you know, I wasn't too familiar you know, I really haven't taken a deep dive into learning a whole lot about the Viking Raiders or Sarah Logan, but having watched that Ride Along, you know, I kind of was getting, you know, a little familiar with them and seeing how they were out of the ring and whatnot. So it's kind of sad to see, like, within days of watching that episode, that Sarah is not with the company, at least for the time being. I think she's one of the examples. We'll get to at least one other one. I think we mentioned another one. I'm sure it'll come to mind if I remember. Oh yeah. So Zack Ryder had his girlfriend, as far as I know, is still in NXT, Chelsea Green. And then you have Rusev, who we'll talk about in a minute. And then so Sarah Logan, her husband still works for the company. Maybe that can open a door for her in the future. But when you talk about tough decisions, you know, you're keeping one partner but not the other. That's kind of tough. So
yeah. Do we have to take another commercial soon? Just let me know.
6 more minutes.
All right, look at that. Our timekeeper of the episode, Rob Flores, ladies and gentlemen. Yay. Someone who's been with the company since 1989, but has not been on television in recent months. So we don't know the situation why, but he hasn't been on TV since last fall, I believe. Mike Chioda, referee Mike Chioda, who had refereed a number of matches. Definitely worthy of a Hall of Fame career.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why he hasn't been on TV recently. So
Well, I think with Mike Chioda, he's one of those guys where, again, much like Gallows and Anderson, not maybe Gallows and Anderson being there as long, but when you reach a certain threshold of how much you're getting paid, when you look at someone who like Mike Chioda, he's been there since the 80s and whatnot. I'm sure he's hopefully been getting some raises over that time. But when he's probably the head of officiating, or even that may explain why he was off TV. Maybe he wasn't doing a lot of officiating, maybe not even traveling a whole lot. I don't know that for sure, but I would assume he was probably having to organize maybe these refs or with this match and whatever. But cutting Mike Chioda may have been the same value as cutting 5 younger referees. For all we know. So I'm assuming that, financially it may have been a smarter decision. I'm sure a tough decision. I think he's a guy, if he does get back in the ring or it is reffing in some capacity, he'll be back. If not, he'll be there somewhere.
Yeah. Tag team who have not been on TV in years, not recently at least. I don't know. I didn't know they were still employed, to be honest with you. That's Primo and Epico Cologne. They were former tag team champions, obviously related to former WWE superstar Carlito. Son and nephew, I believe.
Carlos Colon is the Hall of Famer and the more or less the Hulk Hogan of Puerto Rico, and is the father of Epico and Carlito. And I believe the nephew is Primo, or I may have Epico and Primo.
I think
swapped or something, but
I think it's swapped. But
one of them is the son, one of them is the nephew of Carlos Colon and brother and cousin of Carlito. But I mean, they were a good tag team. They've been in the mix. They had a few gimmicks.
They were the Matadors.
Yeah.
With El Torito.
Right.
A little feud with 3MB at one point. So that famous WLC match with Hornswoggle and El Torito, they were involved in that.
It kind of. I mean, they had a family legacy, and I mean, I'm sure that helps keep you around, maybe. But
they'll wrestle in Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure they'll make money. They'll continue to do their thing, I'm sure.
Mike and Maria Kanellis, who have not had the smoothest run. Obviously, this was Maria's second run with the company. Mike Kanellis joined. Unfortunately, he had an addiction pretty early on, so he got that taken care of. Then Maria got pregnant. And so when she returned, I think it was maybe a couple months, they had the storyline.
Yeah, right.
And she was again pregnant with her second child.
Mm-hmm.
They seem pretty positive on their social media accounts. And I know Mike Canales was trying to get out of his contract last year.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like they're both now out. They teased, they posted some New Japan pictures because they were in New Japan.
Okay.
As a Ring of Honor, their former stable. So could see them go to either one of those for sure.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It seems like they've been wanting to get out of their contract, and they're one of the ones, maybe like an EC3, who have been itching to get out of the WWE just so they can be used in some other capacity. I mean, that's the thing with WWE. It's like, again, they're kind of almost stashing talent, but you have so many people that you forget. Some of them are even with the company, or they're there and they have this brief run on TV, and you think they're going to be used, and all of a sudden they're not being used. Right. So it's interesting to see, but again, a lot of these guys, they go to WWE because they make more money from WWE not even being on TV. This is my understanding, even though they're not on TV, they're making more money than they probably would on the independents or even at in Impact, for example. So, I mean, you got to make your money, and once you make some of that money, you kind of get settled in, you can kind of bounce back on the independent scene and call your own shots once you got a little bit of that WWE bub on you.
Awesome. No Way Jose, he had a small run in NXT, feuded with Austin Aries. That was his only feud, and then when he was brought up to main roster, he became essentially a kind of a comedy.
Filling in for Adam Rose?
Essentially. But he made a video as well. He seemed very positive and grateful for his opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
and so we'll see where he lands next.
I'm curious to know if he lands. I mean, I think if you look at a lot of people on this list, he's one of those who may have the toughest time. I mean, sure, he got the WWE rub, but he was kind of stuck with that gimmick since NXT, and that's all we know of him. He never really had any big moment, as far as I know. So he has nothing that he can even show to say, like, he can be on the independents and say he was in WWE, but I mean, you're not paying him top dollar. He didn't do a whole lot. He didn't get a chance to do a whole lot.
Well, we could see one of these other companies could pick him up. We don't know really his extent of his wrestling ability. We haven't seen him a lot of matches, so it really could just depend.
That's exactly it. But I think he could be one of these guys, maybe pretty much like Drew McIntyre in a way, who can go reinvent themselves, come back, and could be a world champion someday. You never know. The business is weird.
For sure. And we got one more for the main roster talent, Rusev, which was a big one. But we're going to go to a quick commercial break because that was a tease. That's right. We're still having teases right here on our team.
Wow.
Rusev, we're going to discuss him and other releases and promos when we return right here on 22S Radio. This is Beyond the Ropes. And we're back with Beyond the Ropes, episode 108. I'm your host, Ethan, joined alongside the analyst, James, as well as producer and our timekeeper for this episode, Rob Flores. We are on Twitter at RealBTR Radio. You can follow me at EthanNB95 on Twitter and EthanNB on Instagram. Follow James at
GHW Reporter on Instagram and Twitter. Go ahead, Rob. I'll let you out before I give Ethan a hard time.
And Rob, you can follow him at
Rob Flores Media.
And Facebook.com/Beyond the Ropes. And YouTube, just search up Beyond the Ropes. You'll find 107 episodes uploaded currently. Rusev was released.
No, hold on now. Hold on. I'm not letting you get off that easy. Hold on a minute now.
We're almost out of time, sir.
Just give me a second here. You mean to tell me during this whole pandemic, you have not fixed your usernames on Twitter and Facebook or on Instagram?
No, they're separate. They're their own identities.
All right. I'll let you think about it during this pandemic. You think that one over.
Rusev was released. He apparently had some contract negotiations or probably issues with the company. I know early this year there was a whole bunch of back and forth rumors going around, but he was one of the names released. And Lana seemed perfectly happy with it, obviously, because I think they're still married. So.
That's the thing about this. That's again. So I kind of talked about it with Zack Ryder and
Chelsea Green.
and yeah. So and I'm forgetting the other one at the moment, but that it's just so weird. That whole relationship is so weird. Honestly, like I've talked to Lana before, done some interviews with her. She's really nice. Rusev is seems like a sweetheart for all I know, but that's tough. I don't know. Like, just they're really not going to be there. I mean, who knows where Lana's going to be after this Bobby Lashley thing? Because if there's supposed to be a potential breakup there in their storyline, maybe she's on the outs too.
Exactly. So, I don't think we're going to go through all these producers and stuff. If there's any name that sticks out to you that you want to briefly mention, we can. But I do want to get to something else real quick before we do have to get off.
I think guys like Lance Storm, Hurricane Helms, Billy Kidman, I think a lot of those guys, they're going to be coming back. Hopefully. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge there. Finley is another one who has been credited even in Tori Wilson. I believe it was Tori Wilson's Hall of Fame speech as the the person who has really helped with women's wrestling and building it back to the stage that it's at. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of those guys, they have to come back. I mean, it depends how the money issue works out for WWE, but those guys have to come back. There's a lot of knowledge there. So,
yeah. So, some news that came out earlier today was the fact that this week's and next week's Friday Night SmackDown, along with Raw and NXT for next week, will be going live. Last week it was announced that Vince wanted all shows to be live. However, now it appears that starting April 25th, 2 episodes of each show will be recorded, so they will be essentially working every 2 weeks, I believe, which is good because with this whole virus going around, it's not safe to be really working every week. So the first tapings will occur on April 25th with 2 episodes of SmackDown being taped, and on April 27th, 2 episodes of Raw, April 29th, 2 episodes of NXT, and so on until, surprisingly, it goes pretty lengthy. It goes all the way to June 30th. That will be taping episodes until July 10th. So they're preparing for the next few months, which is good. They have received a lot of backlash, obviously, Vince, with these releases and them still working on the show and all of that. So we'll see where that goes. Another interesting note is that Money in the Bank will be happening May 10th, I believe. However, it will not be taking place at the Performance Center. It was reported that they were taping something at the WWE headquarters, and some pictures were released of a ring on top of the building along with the giant crane. So having Money in the Bank on top of the headquarters.
What?
Pictures that have leaked. Let's see.
Send those over. I want to see that.
I will send this over as soon as I can find the pictures again. Yeah, here we go.
But yeah, I mean, so that's and I think I heard something too. You mentioned the WWE headquarters.
I'll send it, but
yeah. Oh my God. Now that's interesting. Wow.
Right there.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. So what I heard too was that because the same headquarters they've had since the Attitude Era, I believe, and has been part of like so many commercials. I think the commercial with Austin going through the building and causing havoc, and the whole "Get the F Out" commercial, I believe it was. They're moving out of that building, or I think that was the building that you showed. But they're supposed to be moving to a new building in Orlando, I think. But that's been put on hold for 6 months, I believe. That's the story.
They put it on hold. I don't know if they were moving to Orlando. I think they were going to stay in Connecticut. But
were they? Yeah, that makes sense. That's where Vince is based out of.
They have WWE studios as well. I think they put everything together in one facility.
Right.
So that's interesting. I believe, Rob, are you keeping track of how much time we have left?
7 more minutes.
7 more minutes. Okay. 7 more minutes. Anything we want to talk about? Tonight we're talking about WrestleMania on our BTR Plus show.
Yeah.
We already kind of went over that, but I don't know what else do you have in
the big thing right now that seems to be coming about, I mean, is this whole Selena Vega stable. I mean, I mean, Andrade, didn't he? So I think Selena Vega was featured on Raw this past week. I didn't get a chance to watch it either. But I saw or heard that she was on Raw 4 different times, I believe. 4 different times.
So Austin Theory, Andrade, and Angel Garza. I believe Austin Theory had a match.
Yeah.
Was in the main event. And I don't know if Garza. I think Garza did have a match as well. So, so she's managing all 3 of them. So there she goes.
And Andrade was in the main event, I believe, with McIntyre. But I think the other 2 might have won their matches, and I think Andrade was beat clean without any interference from the stable there in the match with the new champion. So
I mean, it seems like they're gonna be moving forward with them. I know Austin Theory is gonna have a Money in the Bank qualifying match next Monday.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't think he's gonna win because he's facing Aleister Black. So
they're
pushing Black pretty far, which is good. Apollo Crews, I believe I mentioned to you earlier this week, might be getting a push as well. He will be facing MVP next week in a
Mhm.
qualifying match for the Money in the Bank. So
Yeah, and I think he had a pretty good match. I think that Raw after WrestleMania, I think didn't he have a pretty good match with Aleister Black as well, which may have boosted his stock a little bit or helped start his push. I would
yeah,
also, maybe I'm fantasy booking a little bit here, but Aleister Black is, if not married, in a relationship with Lena Vega. Um,
Mary.
who knows? Maybe this can lead towards something by having them kind of cross paths here, even in this Money in the Bank qualifier. So maybe that's something there. Who knows? I think if someone like an Aleister Black would be another good head honcho. Maybe he doesn't fit in exactly with that stable, but you never know. It's WWE after all.
Yeah, no, Braun Strowman, seemingly going to head into a feud with the Fiend Bray Wyatt.
Yeah.
So that should be interesting. I don't know if they're going to give it back to the Fiend, but we'll see about that.
Maybe.
You have qualifying matches tonight on SmackDown. Daniel Bryan versus Cesaro. Dana Brooke versus Naomi have been announced. So it should be interesting to see what goes on tonight. It will be live, as we mentioned, so we'll see. I think by the time this gets released, it'll already have happened. So,
Right.
Yeah. Anything else we want to discuss before we sign off here?
No, just interesting to see how they'll build the Money in the Bank going forward, and it was kind of interesting with the schedule that they announced going forward. It seems like it's going all the way to June or whatever, July. I don't know the SummerSlam date off the top of my head, but that's supposed to be the next big pay-per-view to look out for.
In
They're
August.
gonna have to be smart about. It's in August, yeah. It's like the end of summer, right? So maybe things will work out, but they're gonna have to start building towards some of that stuff.
Yeah, Vince is part of a special team to get the government and the economy back together.
Right.
I don't get much into that. We're out of time, anyways. But it's an interesting time to be a wrestling fan. It's been tough, especially this week. Under the circumstances, it's just difficult. But we're happy to be doing this. Obviously, we're happy to continue to do this as long as we can via Zoom, remotely from the studio, and we're going to continue to bring this content. I mean, I think we're an essential business, guys, right?
I like to think so. I like to think you guys are essential friends in my life as well. And so I would urge you and I beg you, please make sure you're wearing your face mask, washing your hands, sing the birthday song if you have to, and don't go outside unless you have to.
Yeah, James, go outside unless you have to, Mister. I only go outside twice a week.
I only go out. I have essential business to take care of, and sometimes I do. But when I do, I always wear protection, Ethan.
Okay, well, hopefully that's right. How much longer do we have?
We still have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. We're gonna drag this ending out for 2 more minutes.
Okay, so quick thoughts. We talked about it on BTR Plus, but in 2 or 3 words, summarize your reaction to both the Boneyard match and the Funhouse match on WrestleMania.
Amazing.
Rob, did you watch it? What did you think about it?
Tainted NWO.
Okay. Oh, that's right. You're not a John Cena fan.
People have been wanting Cena to turn heel and so on NWO faction, so they just played to the internet, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, James.
I thought it was great. I think I have the Boneyard being a little bit better. I was a little iffy about the Funhouse finish. It was kind of a little. I didn't know it was really over until you saw Titus's reaction, and even then, I still thought they might cut back to the Funhouse. But I thought it was interesting. I thought the SmackDown fist, the Vince McMahon puppet, the use of the warehouse that they have. I think we can easily see more stuff like this in the future, especially with the way that Boneyard match played out. So,
all right, smile for the camera. All right.
With my Cactus Jack fingers.
Yeah, good enough. All right.
Good enough.
So, thank you for tuning in, everyone. Until next time, whenever we're able to do this again. No, we're gonna try once a week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do the sign off, I guess.
Social distancing.
social distancing. Until next time, this episode of Beyond the Ropes has been to. No,
Did you wash? Did you wash your hands before?
I stopped eating, so I could do this.
Well, make sure you go wash your hands. Not that any of us are nasty, but just go wash your hands because those are the rules nowadays.
I didn't touch the stream. We're off right now.